President Park Geun-hye apologizes for the ferry disaster in her address to the nation and announces safety reform measures. The actual number of jobless people in Korea exceeds 3 million, 3 times the official government data, which does not include the underemployed and those getting ready for job hunts or have given up. And Chinese Foreign Minister Wang is visiting Korea next week, mainly to fine-tune the details of President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul, expected in the coming months. Hello and welcome to the program. I am Kang Tae-ri in Seoul. 33 days have passed since the Seoul ferry sank off South Korea's southwestern coast, taking with it the lives of hundreds of people, many of whom were high school students. And on this Monday, President Park Geun-hye apologized for the disaster and laid out measures to bolster national safety in a nationally televised address. Choi Yoo-sun has our top story.
이번 사고에 제대로 대처하지 못한 최종 책임은 대통령인 저에게 있습니다.
For the first time since the Seoul ferry accident last month, President Park directly apologized to the nation. It came amid criticism of her previous apologies, as many people felt she wasn't taking full responsibility as the head of state, saying that the Coast Guard had failed to fulfill its duties in swiftly attending to the passengers of the sinking ferry. President Park said she was dissolving the organization.
국가안전처를 만들어 각 부처에 분산된 안전 관련 조직을 통합하고 지휘 체계를 일원화해서 육상과 해상에서 일어나는 모든 유형의 재난에 현장 중심으로 대응할 수 있는 체제를 만들겠습니다.
President Park also talked about cutting off ties between the public sector and private entities. Claims of cronyism between the two have been blamed for the government's insufficient and lax handling of the disaster. She suggested tripling the number of public organizations and affiliates that are barred from employing retired public employees and extending the period after which retired workers can return to the workforce. Regarding the punishment of those linked to the ferry disaster, the president seemingly took account of what the victims' families requested during a meeting at the presidential office last week.
필요하다면 특검을 해서 모든 진상을 낱낱이 밝혀내고 엄정하게 처벌할 것입니다. 그리고 여야와 민간이 참여하는 진상조사위원회를 포함한 특별법을 만들 것도 제안합니다.
As she read out the names of some of the ferry victims, President Park said that she will not leave their deaths in vain and designate April 16, the day of the sinking, as a day to remember their sacrifices. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
And front and center of a month-long parliamentary session that kicked off today here in Seoul is the ferry disaster, of course. The rival parties are already bickering over the timing and scope of a parliamentary investigation into the disaster. Kim Young-gil reports.
The Seoul ferry tragedy will dominate this month's parliamentary extraordinary session. Under the plans already agreed upon by the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, a request for a parliamentary investigation into the disaster will be submitted on Tuesday. It will be followed by a 2-day session where lawmakers will grill government officials over the failed response to the nation's worst maritime disaster in decades. But not all related officials will appear.
The Oceans Minister and the Coast Guard Chief will not attend the hearings as they have the responsibility of being at the Seoul ferry accident site.
The opposition alliance wants a number of investigations into the tragedy launched immediately. It is calling for a parliamentary probe, a separate independent council investigation, and a parliamentary hearing.
The special committee on Seoul ferry opens today. We must devise measures to help the families of the victims, and we must conduct a parliamentary probe. The National Assembly must accomplish all we need to do.
However, the ruling party is likely to approach the issues more cautiously and focus more on follow-up measures and uncovering the cause of the accident. Especially with regard to the special counsel investigation, the two parties are unlikely to reach a consensus, with the Saenuri Party and New Politics Alliance for Democracy bickering over its timing and scope, as well as the appointment of a special counsel. Both rival parties plan to finalize the details of a special parliamentary investigation into the April ferry disaster on May 27th. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
South Korea will be welcoming China's Foreign Minister Wang next week. And North Korea is, of course, expected to top the agenda, but also high on the list is Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul, expected in the coming months. So Wang tells us more.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi will visit Seoul next Monday for talks with his South Korean counterpart Yoon Byung-se, as the two countries seek to put a stop to North Korea's nuclear ambitions. On top of the agenda will be fine-tuning the details of Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul. Xi is expected to make his first trip to South Korea since becoming president in the coming months. Although a specific date has not been set, South Korean government officials say the summit may take place in the first half of this year. Another pending issue on the table will be the possibility of a fourth nuclear test by North Korea. While North Korea appears ready to conduct a test at any time, Beijing may use Wang's visit to send a clear message to Pyongyang that its nuclear ambitions will not be tolerated and could result in stronger sanctions. At the same time, it could reiterate the need for dialogue to settle tensions on the Korean peninsula. Beijing and Seoul during Wang's visit may also exchange opinions about Japan's denial of history and its push for collective self-defense. Both nations, major victims of Tokyo's past militarism, have voiced concerns over the Abe administration's pursuit to revise its pacifist constitution without fully recognizing the country's wartime atrocities. The revision would allow Japan to come to the defense of an ally under attack, a revival of bitter World War II memories for the two nations. During his two-day stay, the Chinese diplomat is also scheduled to visit with President Park Geun-hye and Presidential Security Advisor Kim Jang-soo. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Also sitting down for talks later this month, but in Singapore, will be the defense chiefs of South Korea, the United States, and Japan. And topping their agenda will also be North Korea, its nuclear and missile programs. South Korea's defense ministry says that Kim Kwan-jin, Chuck Hagel, and Itsunori Onodera are meeting on May 31st on the sidelines of the 13th Asia Security Summit. Although the details of the meeting are to be finalized sometime next week, the North Korea threat is expected to top discussions there. The sharing of military intelligence will also likely be on the table, as Seoul has been pushing for the three sides to sign an MOU on the matter.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Kang Chae-ri for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to persuade. And following her emotional televised address earlier this morning, President Park Geun-hye left for a two-day visit to the United Arab Emirates. During the 40-hour-long trip, she will attend a ceremony to celebrate the installation of a multi-billion-dollar nuclear reactor that South Korea hopes to will open the door to other mega deals. Na Hyun-kyung has more.
Despite criticism about the timing of the trip, President Park is squeezing in a short two-day visit to the United Arab Emirates starting Monday. It goes to show just how important she and the government regard the joint project in the Arab country. A 1,400-megawatt light water reactor built with Korean technology will be installed in Baraka, west of Abu Dhabi, and President Park will attend a ceremony celebrating the installation of the reactor, which is part of an estimated $40 billion bid Korea won in 2009. The deal includes the construction of 4 nuclear units in the region by the year 2020. Approximately 1,600 Korean workers are currently at the construction site in Baraka, and depending on the progress, Korea is said to be receiving up to nearly $300 million per month from the UAE. The first nuclear unit is not expected to be completed until 2017, but Korean government officials are hoping President Park's visit this week will demonstrate the nation's strong commitment to the project and send a message to other countries that may be considering similar deals with Korea. Saudi Arabia, for example, is looking to generate up to 20% of its electricity needs through nuclear energy by 2030. It plans to do so by building a total of 16 nuclear units by the year 2032, with the goal of having the first reactor online in 7 years' time. Vietnam is also looking for a contractor for building nuclear power plants, and with winners of both bids expected to be decided by the end of this year, the state-run Korea Electric Power Corporation is pulling out all the stops to make sure the deals are brought to Seoul. 나현경, ARIRANG News.
Korea's unemployment rate officially stands at 3.9%, which is an enviable figure compared to many other countries around the world. In reality, however, that figure is very far off the mark. Wang tells us what's behind this discrepancy and how the government's going to address it.
Song Se-jin says he's one of many who've delayed graduation to gain more preparation time to find work. Although he can graduate, he prefers to remain as a student until he lands a job.
I think many of my friends have high scores for English proficiency tests, and they also have different kinds of certificates. So I also took a semester off to prepare for all that.
But Song is not categorized as unemployed in the nation's jobs data. Rather, he's just a student preparing to get a job. And it's because of people like this that economists look past the official jobless rate to a so-called actual unemployment rate that includes those who are preparing to get a job underemployed or discouraged from finding a job. Taking them into account, the actual jobless bracket included over 3 million individuals in April, more than 3 times the government's official figure. The actual jobless rate also stands at 11%, up more than 7 percentage points from the unemployment rate announced last month. Statistics Korea, which compiles the jobs data, counts only those who don't have a job despite their efforts to get one, and that means when they actually start filling out applications.
But it has been criticized for many years that it is too narrow a definition to reflect the true state of unemployment and is inclined to underestimate the number of true unemployed.
In response to the criticism, Korea's statistics agency plans to release a new set of data in November which provides jobless figures based on international standards that will include the underemployed and discouraged seekers. It said the extra data would offer a full picture of the nation's job market. 황지혜, 아리랑 뉴스.
Samsung Electronics made 7 out of 10 smartwatches sold globally in the first quarter of this year. Strategy Analytics says Samsung Electronics shipped out some 500,000 smartwatches in the first quarter, more than 71% of the global market share. That's a jump from the 52% recorded last year, and also far ahead of its closest competitors in this market, Sony and Pebble, each with 11% of market share. But Strategy Analytics did point to Apple's iWatch set to hit the market this year as a possible threat to Samsung's dominance. And doctors treating Samsung Electronics chairman Park Geun-hye say his condition is stable and gradually improving. Samsung Medical Center in Seoul also says that doctors are considering transferring him to a general ward from the intensive care unit, dispelling rumors that he is in critical condition. This after he suffered a heart attack over a week ago. Speculation that his condition was worsening ran high on Friday after a media outlet reported that he had died that day. Korea's three leading credit card firms are now fully back to work as the 3-month-long business suspension for their involvement in the biggest personal data leak in Korean history has come to an end. However, financial authorities will keep an eye on them and stand ready with more sanctions if they step out of the line again. Kim Min-ji reports.
Credit card companies KB Gungmin Card, Lotte Card, and NH Nongyup Card have resumed operations after a 3-month business suspension following the leak of personal data of some 140 million customers. Starting with online services, the card companies are now able to issue new credit cards, extend loans, and provide cash advances. The firms will also promote a series of new card products with ample benefits to attract new customers and make up for the loss incurred during the suspension period. The ban is believed to have cost the companies tens of millions of dollars and millions of customers. The country's biggest ever data leak was caused by an employee from a credit ratings agency stealing personal information, including identification numbers and bank account numbers, and selling it to an advertising company. Meanwhile, financial authorities are planning to offer greater incentives for reporting of illegal practices of card firms when issuing new credit cards. The Financial Supervisory Service said those who report of illegal methods to entice customers, such as issuing credit cards on the streets or offering giveaways that exceed 10% of the annual membership fee, will be able to receive roughly $490 in incentives, 5 times more than the original amount. The reporting period will also be extended to 60 days from the current 20 and can be done through the Credit Finance Association, the Financial Supervisory Service, or individual card companies. The financial authorities say they will inspect the credit card companies during the second half of the year, and if they conduct wrongdoings or irregularities, they will be subject to heftier punishment. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Two vessels have arrived in Vietnam to evacuate Chinese citizens who are fleeing the country after anti-China protests have left 2 dead and over 100 others injured. With more on the story, we now go to Paul Lee at the News Center. Paul, there's been quite an exodus from Vietnam over the weekend.
Well, that's right. Some 3,000 Chinese expats have fled the Southeast Asian country, and that number is expected to grow as Beijing continues to send ships to evacuate more of its nationals in the coming days. Hanoi, in response, has promised stronger measures to quell the anti-China unrest. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the story.
China is demanding Vietnam to do more to protect Chinese nationals amid anti-China protests in Vietnam, sparked by an oil rig in disputed waters in the South China Sea. Beijing is urging Hanoi to take tougher measures to quell the violence. It evacuated thousands of Chinese nationals from Vietnam following the attacks that killed at least 2 people and injured dozens. China has reportedly sent 2 charter flights and 5 ships to the region.
We sent our best crewmen to Vietnam for the evacuation.
A country heavily reliant on foreign investment, the Vietnamese government has called for an end to the protests. Businesses and workers affected by the unrest have criticized the local authorities for their lax response, accusing the police of arriving too late or in insufficient numbers. Vietnamese police have a reputation of blocking such demonstrations before they can take place. Anger spread and protests of hundreds took to the streets of Vietnam's major cities after a state-run energy firm from China towed an oil rig in waters claimed by both China and Vietnam. This recent spat is the worst since a border dispute between the 2 countries in 1979. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
And Paul, turning now to South America, a tragic accident claiming the lives of at least 32 people in Colombia, most of them children. It looks like authorities are blaming it on a bus fire for this tremendous loss of life.
Well, that's right. Authorities say they are still investigating the cause of the blaze that engulfed an overcrowded school bus on Sunday, but local media say the bus may have been smuggling gasoline. The bus was heading to a church event in northern Colombia near the town of Fundación. The mayor of the town said that 40 to 50 young students were traveling on the bus, but were only accompanied by a driver who was also killed. Around 10 children were able to escape and are now receiving medical attention. Witnesses who saw the fire break out say they were powerless to help.
There was a young man who was rescuing several girls. A girl reached her arms out to him, but the blaze that was coming out of the bus didn't allow the man to remove the girl, and he had to back up. And there were some boys who were hitting the windows, hitting with their heads, and everyone was running to the back.
President Juan Manuel Santos has expressed his condolences for the victims and traveled to the accident site. It's the deadliest bus accident Colombia has seen since 2004, when a school bus was smashed by construction machines, killing 21 children.
All right, and moving on to Libya, Paul, the country has been experiencing violent attacks across the country as rival militia groups attempt to take control of the interim government there. And it looks like the latest attack has struck the main parliamentary building.
That's right. Heavy armed gunmen tried to storm the Grand National Congress in the Libyan capital of Tripoli on Sunday. However, they were forced to retreat after facing resistance from government security forces. Authorities say it's still unclear who was behind the chaotic attack. Eyewitnesses say the attackers were from the Zintan Brigade of former rebel fighters. However, those loyal to the renegade army general Khalifa Haftar have also claimed responsibility. What we do know is that the anti-government rebels are demanding that parliament be suspended and power given back to recently elected officials. At a news conference, Haftar vowed to purge the country of Islamist hardliners.
All the forces are there and they are getting ready. In the military, when we launch a battle, it's followed by reorganizing our troops, then we return with strength. It's impossible for us to go back on this matter. We will never retreat until we reach our goals.
With at least 70 people killed this past week, it's some of the worst fighting since Muammar Gaddafi was removed from power in 2011. The government remains in limbo as a new constitution has yet to be written, with various factions vying for control to determine what kind of state Libya should become.
And Paul, before I let you go, Thailand is bracing for another wave of anti-government demonstrations, setting the stage for another round of violent clashes between rival protest camps there. Is there still hope for a diplomatic solution to this civil unrest?
Well, at this point, it seems unlikely. Anti-government protesters have vowed to fight to the bitter end to get a new prime minister installed with a People's Council to be put in charge. Mass rallies are expected to be staged in the coming days in the capital city of Bangkok, but a former Thai premier and protest leader Suthep Thaugsup Suban said he would surrender to the authorities at the end of this month if this final push doesn't succeed. Many who support Suthep say they've lost hope of a government free of corruption.
I don't think the government can continue in their posts because they can't govern the country. The government should show more responsibility for the sake of the country.
Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra and 9 of her ministers were forced to step down early this month by a court order, but protesters are demanding that all the ministers be replaced. Thailand has been in political turmoil since protests flared up in November, leading to the deaths of 28 people. Chetty?
It sure has. All right, Paul, thanks very much for that report, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours. Now let's get a check on the weather with our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, I understand that showers are in store down south tomorrow.
That's right, and this round of showers will bring down daytime highs in the southern regions to the low 20s. At the moment, as you can see, we are seeing cloudy skies across the map due to a low pressure trough from the East Sea. Well, tomorrow's rain will begin in Jeju and gradually spread to most parts of the southern regions. Approximately 20 to 60 millimeters is forecast for Jeju, and elsewhere 5 to 30 millimeters is expected. Otherwise, things will clear up by tomorrow evening, and sunny conditions are forecast for the central regions. As for Tuesday's readings, Well, Seoul tops out at 27 degrees. Rainy Gwangju and Busan will hit the low 20s. Moving on to other places, Jeju peaks at 20 degrees. Dokdo and Mount Kumgang make it to 18 and 16. That's all the updates I have for Korea, and here's a look at the international weather.
And that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News, but we're coming back with more at 10 p.m. Korea time. See you then.